how to start an LLC in California. It's a common question I get from so many clients, so many friends, people hitting me up all the time. How do you start an LLC? What's the right way to do it? I don't want to do it wrong. I don't want to lose my house. I don't want to get sued. Instead of explaining this to all my friends and clients about 1,000 times at this point, I thought on the 1001 time, I'm going to make a video and hopefully help everyone out by really breaking it down. What are the steps? What are the things you need to remember when starting your LLC? So without further ado, here we go. The first thing you want to remember when starting an LLC is make sure you know why you're creating the LLC. Okay, people think, oh, I need a business, I'm starting a business, LLC. That's actually not the right way to go about it. You really need to think about what is it that you're trying to create and why? And what is the purpose of this business entity? Is it for liability protection? Is it for savings on taxes? There's a few considerations. So this video doesn't really cover the why. We're gonna have another video talking about the differences between LLCs, S corporations, corporations, because it really depends on the type of business you're creating as far as the type of entity choice you want to make. We're gonna talk today about the LLC with the understanding that you've decided, you've done the due diligence, you've done the analysis, and you're set on creating the LLC. If that's the case, the first thing you want to do in California is go to the Secretary of State website, okay? It's easily Google Secretary of State, California. And once you get there, you want to go to forming your business, forming your LLC. And they make it really easy nowadays. But the first thing you want to do is also search. Do a search first of all the business entities. There's an option that says search business entities in California and search your name to make sure that your name is available, because the first thing you want to make sure is that you can actually set up the entity with the name you want, and you want to make sure you search kind of different derivations of it, similar names. Generally speaking, you can, if no one has the exact name with the exact spelling, you can usually create that. If someone has something slightly different, maybe there's an S at the end or something like that, you could still probably create your LLC. But an important caveat is that if someone has a similar name and that is a brand, that could be a trademark, then you could run into trademark issues. And that's going to be another video we'll talk about, where we do a lot of work with trademarks and we can talk about brand concerns. But for the purposes of this video, a LLC, when you create that, it's called your trade name, different from your trademark. Really important to remember. You can use this name, and let's say it turns out that maybe it's too similar to someone else doing some similar business in another part of the country and could create a trademark problem. You can still have the trade name, even if it's conflicting, but you'd have to operate under a different brand. So slight tangent, but important. Second thing you want to do, you want to make sure you have a registered agent, okay? A registered agent is someone who is going to accept service on your behalf. If there's a lawsuit, if there's any important legal documents that need to be served on the LLC, that is that registered agent. Now, there's a common misconception that needs to be a lawyer. Not necessarily. You could actually name yourself as a registered agent. We often serve as registered agents for our clients. We are a registered agent with the California Secretary of State as Carbon Law Group. So if a lot of clients have us serve as their registered agent, because we know what to do with legal documents, cases as they come in. So I recommend that's something good to do, but by no means are you required to do that. You could always list yourself, but remember, everything you file online is going to be public record. So if you don't have another business, if you don't have another business address, recognize that your house, where you live, could be listed publicly, and not everyone wants that. Another reason why people choose like a law firm or some other service to serve as a registered agent. The next thing you want to remember, figure out ideally early on, is who are the initial members and how are you guys going to work together? A lot of people have set up single member LLCs, which is totally fine, a lot less to figure out. But if there's multiple partners, there's a bit more to do. You're going to want to think about what's each person doing, what are the obligations, what are the responsibilities, what happens if things don't work out. You want to work through all that and also kind of think about your end goal. We've been developing kind of a pre-formation called a founder prenup agreement that we'll be releasing in the near future to help our clients sift through this, to really understand what is it that they're trying to build and why, and make sure that they are asking all the important questions, all the sometimes difficult questions, almost like couples therapy early on. But I know that it is so valuable to have those important conversations early on for someone who has been in partnerships personally as well as professionally. Having those conversations early on is super important, and that's also why we kind of created this founder prenup worksheets and agreement that we'll be releasing in the near future. Now you're ready. You've got all the information you need. You know your office address. Make sure you have an address that is different from your. It can't be a PO box, and ideally it needs to be a physical location. And if once you have that, you know your registered agent. You know the name. Now you can file the document, and all you have to do nowadays is file online. You can fill out a form on the Secretary of State website and file, and you're good to go. So after you filed your document, great, okay? That's the first step, but you're not done. The next thing you want to do is make sure you file your statement of information. The statement of information asks, okay, who are the members of the LLC? Who are the owners? And you're going to ask, they're going to ask for their addresses, information to that extent. And you want to make sure that's filed within 90 days of the filing of your LLC, initial LLC 1 articles of organization. Very important. It has to be filed within 90 days. If you don't file within 90 days, you'll probably be hit with penalties and you could jeopardize the status of your LLC. So very important. 90 days is the name of the game, is the deadline for you to file this statement of information. And once you file that, now you'd file another one every 2 years by the 2-year anniversary of your filing date of your LLC. If you filed on January 1st, 2022, now you've got to make sure you file your statement of information, your next one, by January 1st, 2024. Even if nothing's changed, you've got to make sure you file it. Again, we have so many issues with clients who forget to file these and it creates real problems because your LLC could be canceled if you fail to file this, which means that contracts that you enter into could be voided. So if your LLC is canceled or suspended and now you're entering into contracts, that means it could essentially be, all those contracts could be voided and you're going to put yourself into a very precarious legal position. So file your statement of information within 90 days, then 2 years after the anniversary of your original filing of your LLC documents. The next thing you want to think about is your operating agreement. We talked about, okay, if you're having members, if you're a single member, not the end of the world if you don't have one, because you can have an oral operating agreement. And if it's just you, not a big deal because no one's really asking about your company. But if you have a team, if you have partners, very, very important to have an operating agreement. I cannot tell you the amount of litigation, the hundreds and millions of dollars that have been spent in California on lawsuits because people didn't have well-drafted operating agreements. This is the foundation of your company. This is the Constitution. These are the founding documents that will determine who has the right to what, how does voting work, who has a say, who doesn't have a say, how much someone has a say, how are profits distributed. There's a lot of really important information here, tax and otherwise, that you need to put in a well thought out operating agreement. Okay, we draft very complex ones as also kind of simple ones too for our clients. But anyone who's taking their business seriously and wants to grow this into a multi-million dollar or larger business needs to spend and invest in a great operating agreement. It doesn't have to be with me. I want you to just get it with some lawyer, some great lawyer. Please do me that favor so you do not put yourself in legal jeopardy. I've had clients who are still in litigation spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on litigation because they would not agree to an operating agreement early on. So first and foremost, make sure if you have partners, have an operating agreement and set a deadline as to when that needs to be executed. Generally speaking, if you need an operating agreement drafted, you're going to have an attorney for the company. We often set up LLCs, so we're the attorney for a company. But it's usually a good idea, especially if there's a lot of money involved, for each member to have their own attorney as well. Because me as a lawyer for a LLC, I cannot advise each individual on their personal rights. That's wrong. That's ethically a conflict. So I always suggest, hey, you two should show this to another lawyer, get another opinion on this document and make sure it serves your interests, because oftentimes we all have our own interests. Does it really meet your expectations for the future? I think it's worth the investment to also have that additional set of eyes on the operating agreement, because you want to make sure it really captures what your goals are with the company, how to maintain some equity or make sure that you're getting more equity in the future if you're working harder, how to address disagreements if they arise, because the more you can think through those now, the more time and money it'll save you and heartache it'll save you later on. So the next thing is make sure you are filing your taxes, okay? You've done all this other work. You got your LLC formed, you got statement of information, you got a great operating agreement. It's all set up, great, you're ready to go. But the thing you cannot forget is make sure you file your taxes. And that means even as a single member or a multi-member, set up an account with the Franchise Tax Board. You're going to get a notice in the mail. They're going to tell you, hey, we want our money. California is very good at that. Those of you who've been here for a long time know that. They're not shy about asking for their taxes and their money. So go to the Franchise Tax Board, set up an account and pay your quarterly taxes. A minimum tax for an LLC is $800 a year. means you can usually file quarterly, which is $200 quarterly. That's the minimum. Again, it can go up from there based on how much money you make. So if you make over $250,000, you're going to be paying more. There's a kind of a gradation. Work with an accountant. Okay, that's my last suggestion for everyone. Have an accountant, have a CPA, have a bookkeeper. Make sure your books are in order, because if you do not properly run your LLC, if you're running personal expenses through your LLC, legally that could jeopardize the legal protection you have with your LLC. It's called piercing the corporate veil. You do not want to be dealing with that. If there's ever a lawsuit, if you're selling something to someone, they feel like you've done something wrong, they will try to get at you personally. And the LLC is a limited liability company there to protect you, but it's only as strong as how you operate it. So if you are operating it in a sloppy way, if your books are a mess, if you're running personal expenses through it, it's an easy way for people to now get at you and name you personally in a lawsuit. And now that's going to be a much bigger expense, and potentially your personal assets could be at risk. So the last thing I want to say is make sure you have an accountant, make sure you're running this thing above board, make sure the finances are being taken care of and looked at, because you do not want to be dealing with the alter ego claim or something where your personal assets could be at jeopardy. The whole point of the LLC is to create that limited liability shield, the barrier between the business and you want to make sure that's preserved. A lot we covered. I hope this was super helpful. My name is Pankaj Raval, founder of Carbon Law Group, and we are here to help business owners, business startups, entrepreneurs, and fast-growing businesses as they grow and scale. We're going to have a lot more videos coming. Hope this was helpful. Have a great day, and best of luck with your ventures.